Los Angeles Raiders entered the Kingdome in Seattle for the AFC wildcard game, a team on the brink. Their defense had been dominant, but their offense under Mark Wilson had been inconsistent. The playoff call went to the now healthy Jim Plunkett, a man who always seemed to save his best for when it mattered most. Coach Tom Flores was hoping that Plunkett's recent history of playoff magic would be just the tonic to revive the slumbering Raider offense. But the defending Super Bowl champions were up against a more powerful force, the Seahawks' strong defense, led by defensive end Jacob Green, number 79. Green not only pressured Plunkett on the pass, but also shut down the attempted cutbacks of Marcus Allen, number 32. Green's aggressive play set the tone for a game that would be hard-hitting and tactical, with yardage gained in small pieces, not big chunks. Plunkett and the Raiders showed signs of offensive life throughout the first half, mainly through the air when Plunkett had time to throw. Completions to tight end Todd Christensen and wide receiver Malcolm Barnwell, number 80, were, however, the only plays of significance that the Raiders' offense could muster in a first half dominated by Seattle's overwhelming defense. In addition to the destructive rush of Green and the defensive line, the Seahawks used the blitz. On this play, linebacker Keith Butler, number 53, delays before his charge. This delay causes Raider back Frank Hawkins to look elsewhere to block, giving Butler a free path to Plunkett for another sack. Seahawks' defensive pressure was expected to play a key role, but few thought that Seattle could run effectively against the Raiders, particularly without a feature back. But Seahawk coach Chuck Knox built his offense around the run, and Seattle surprisingly controlled the ball on the ground, using Dan Dornick and David Hughes, number 46. Seattle used the Raiders' tendency to aggressively pursue to its advantage. Here, Seahawk guards Edwin Bailey and Robert Pratt will block to the right as Raider linebacker Jack Squirick follows their paths. Squirick sets himself up for a block by Bailey that allows Hughes to cut back and pick up good yardage. In the second quarter of this scoreless game, the Seahawks turned to another matchup they believed to be in their favor. They did not feel Raiders All-Pro corner Lester Hayes could stay with their rookie burner Darryl Turner. The Seahawks proved to be right. Dave Craig's pass to Turner was good for a 26-yard touchdown, and the Seahawks had scored with less than 5 minutes remaining in the first half. Another look shows that Turner not only beat Hayes, but safety Otis McKinney, who had come over for the double team. The Seahawks led 7-0, but more importantly, they had scored first, and their fans exploded. Was this Francis Scott Key watching the Rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, or was it merely a football game? Tough to tell in the Kingdome, the land of fanatic Seahawk faithful and the home of a pass rush that makes quarterbacks none too brave. The Seahawks continued to pummel Plunkett, and the leader again was Jacob Green, who proved too much for Raider tackle Henry Lawrence to handle. Green was in on 3 sacks in the first half as Seattle's defense totally shut down the Raiders. The switch to Plunkett had done little to awaken the Raiders, mostly because Green and his mates had given the veteran quarterback hardly any time to find his receivers. Seattle's lead was only 7-0 as the first half ended, but the Raiders were taking a physical beating on both sides of the ball, and they knew it. things would not change dramatically in the final 30 minutes. The second half of the Seahawk-Raider game began on the same note that the first half ended on. The Seattle pass rush did not show any signs of letting up in its persistent pursuit of Jim Plunkett. The Seahawks manhandled the beleaguered Raider quarterback in a style that was very reminiscent of the defending champion's own powerful pass rush of a year ago. Plunkett soon became so battle-weary that even his arm began to tire, and many of his passes often lacked their usual zip. The Seahawks did indeed pressure Plunkett into some weak-willed throws that could have been interpreted as intentional grounding. But Seattle also forced him into some strong arm tosses that had the word interception telegraphed all over them. Much of Seattle's success this season has stemmed from their timely ability to force the turnover. At the same time, much of the Raiders' frustration in 1984 can be attributed to their league-leading 48 giveaways. It was these two factors that turned the tide in favor of the Seahawks. Frank Hawkins' costly cough-up gave Seattle the football inside the Raider 40-yard line with less than 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Another angle of this key play shows that what looks like a lucky break for the Seahawks was really the residue of design. Seattle linebacker Bruce Schultz met Hawkins with an arm tackle that was clearly meant to separate the Raider runner from the football. Once the pigskin popped free, the only people the swarming Seahawks were fighting with for possession were each other. Moments later, a field goal lifted the Seahawks to a 10-0 lead. It proved to be all the points Seattle needed. The Raider offense could never really get off the ground. One reason why was the Seahawks' special teams were inflicting the same sort of punishment on Raiders' kick returners as their pass rush was on Jim Plunkett. By getting pounded with a double dose of lethal hitting, the Raiders were certainly getting a taste of their own bitter medicine. This was a physical affair where players on both sides were in need of some first aid attention. But in medical school scholar and aspiring physician Dan Dornick, number 33, the Seahawks had the right prescription for moving the ball against the tough LA defense. Dornick's 140 rushing and receiving yards represented 60% of the Seahawks' ball control total yardage, and his surprise performance overshadowed a gallant effort by the Raiders' Marcus Allen, who single-handedly gave LA one last chance for victory with this clutch fourth-quarter touchdown grab. A second look at Allen's 46-yard reception shows that for one of the few times in the game, Jim Plunkett enjoyed a perfect pocket to pass in. The same time that gave Plunkett a chance to scan the field also allowed Allen the seconds he needed to get behind the Seattle secondary. The Raiders have always specialized in the big play, but Allen's touchdown came with just 5 minutes remaining in the game. By the time LA got their hands on the ball again, there were but 45 seconds left on the clock. With only a prayer's chance of pulling this one out, Plunkett sent a Hail Mary pass into a very devilish Seahawks secondary. It was perhaps appropriate that still another turnover sealed Seattle's 13-7 victory. With their win, Seattle earned a return trip to Miami, the scene of their big playoff triumph of a year ago. As for Tom Flores, well, for the second time in his head coaching career, he treaded the beaten path of disappointment following a Super Bowl season. But he can take some comfort in the fact that he lost to a team whose game plan was right out of the Raiders' own playbook of defense and domination. It may not have looked pretty, but to Seahawk fans, this was a blueprint for victory that was, in the end, a thing of beauty. The Los Angeles Rams opened the wild card round of the NFC playoffs with home field advantage and perhaps a little psychological edge as well. After all, they had whipped their opponents, the erratic New York Giants, 33-12 in Week 5, and were confidently running toward a repeat victory, especially when they have workhorse Eric Dickerson, the league's leading rusher, in their offensive stable. Teams have been on the lookout for the thoroughbred runner all season, but most have been unable to tighten the reins around him. New York has its own shining star in Lawrence Taylor, who saw to it that Dickerson had to fight for every yard he got, as the stingy Giant defense was in a very combative mood. The daring Giants never lost their heads about how to contain Dickerson and limited number 29 to a mere 37 yards in the first half of play. While Dickerson's offensive exploits are certainly not hearsay, the only thing this running back heard all day were footsteps. But Dickerson wasn't the only prey for the ravenous Giant defenders. Quarterback Jeff Kemp was a tempting target for New York as well. The game plan of the Giant defense was to prevent Dickerson from gaining his momentum. Unfortunately, lack of momentum also spread to the Giant offense, despite the efforts of quarterback Phil Simms and Zeke Moat, number 84. The Giants fared no better on the ground against the Rams' number 3 ranked rush defense in the league. Defense on both sides set the tempo for this game, and it seemed like only a big play would break things open. Eric Dickerson is a big play specialist, but this wasn't exactly what he had in mind. Dickerson's fumble was recovered by the Giants and set up the first touchdown of the game. Phil Simms sported a hot hand as he spotted an open Bob Johnson, number 88. But the Rams weren't conceding 6 points without making Rob Carpenter work for his lone yard. The Giants came up empty on 2 straight attempts, but this is a more determined club than the one which previously faced the Rams and gained only 8 total yards rushing. By the 3rd try, Carpenter had sufficiently honed his hurdling skills. The Giants mounted a 10-0 lead, but when they looked to inflate that total, the Rams quickly and decisively moved to burst that bubble. Carl Ecker, number 55, did some exploding of his own right through the Giant line, sending Phil Simms to an abrupt crash landing. Meanwhile, the Ram offense, which was having its own trouble taking off, gained some altitude with a new twist. Dickerson blocking and Kemp throwing to Ron Brown, number 89, who put forth his best whirling dervish imitation. Brown Brown turned in a strong effort, but the Rams only managed a 38-yard Mike Lansford field goal. Still, Los Angeles refused to throw in the towel to the Giants, who led 10-3 at halftime. New York had succeeded in shutting down the explosive Dickerson for 30 minutes. But coach Bill Parcells knew better than to let his players become complacent. Not when he's sitting on a potential time bomb, which could detonate at any moment. Led by the accurate short-range passing of Phil Simms, the Giants opened the second half by scoring on their first two offensive series. Because he kept one and sometimes two backs as pass protectors, Simms had plenty of pocket time. On both drives, Simms was aided by fine catches by receivers Zeke Moad and Lionel Manuel, number 86. All season, the New York air attack has been vertical, meaning medium to long passes downfield. Sunday against the Rams, Simms threw underneath the coverage of the Rams' fine secondary into the seams, where there was room to roam. Though both Giant drives stalled near the Los Angeles 20, kicker Ali Haji Sheikh atoned for his disastrous early season inconsistency by hitting a perfect 3 for 3 from the field. It brought the Giants' point total to 16. On LA's first possession of the second half, a long Jeff Kemp pass intended for Drew Hill produced a controversial interference call on safety Terry Kennard, number 43. The disputed call resulted in a 45-yard gain, the longest by far of the day for the home team, and provided the input for the Rams' first and only touchdown of the sunny afternoon, when Eric Dickerson, held in check up to this point, sailed through left tackle untouched. When the heralded Dickerson is in full stride, running with his head held high, he is nearly unstoppable. On the Rams' next series, the first of the fourth quarter, it appeared the NFC's Player of the Year would go all the way when, behind picture-perfect blocking, he hurdled one defender, then burst into the clear down the right sideline. But Terry Kennard, number 43, made one of the two critical defensive plays of the day for the Giants. Kennard's shoestring tackle turned a potential 58-yard touchdown into a 24-yard run that brought nothing but frustration for the Rams. In one of the most puzzling decisions by an NFL coach in many moons, John Robinson, with his team perched on the brink of the go-ahead touchdown, elected to give the ball to someone other than Eric Dickerson. On the single most important play of the day, blocking back Dwayne Crutchfield, number 45, was stopped dead in his tracks by Leonard Marshall, number 70. It was the biggest play of the defensive end's two-year pro career, and it took the steam out of Los Angeles' impressive drive. The Rams were forced to settle for 3 points instead of the 7 that would have given them the lead. When the Giants' Joe Morris burst through the line for a 61-yard run, it appeared New York had cemented the playoff victory. But a holding penalty wiped out the big play and gave the Californians one last chance for a wild card win. But the Los Angeles attack couldn't get on track, and with one snap left, Jeff Kemp went to the sidelines to confer with the Ram Brain Trust for the last time in 1984. For New York, it was appropriate that number 56, the great linebacker Lawrence Taylor, made the play that snuffed out the Rams' final hopes. Nowhere are those dashed dreams better symbolized than the weathered face of Jack Youngblood. Fittingly, in this stadium in Anaheim, California, just down the road from Disneyland, where dreams are sold, the surprising New York Giants fulfilled a fantasy of their own. An all-expense-paid one-week stay in sunny California in preparation for the second leg of their improbable three-stop journey to Palo Alto and the Super Bowl.